Good morning, Mr. Bagby here on week number 5. It's the end of summer. Fall begins on Wednesday. Let's get started with share the screen. All right, we're going to go directly to here and share this one. Now, this is the same for Mr. Bagby and Mrs. Fleming's homeroom. Some new notes. We begin small group project teams meetings this week. You work together with your team. It's not optional. We'll divide up the work, and Mr. B will be popping in and out constantly like magic. The chat room. You may chat in the chat room before and after daily meetings. You must chat in the chat room in your small groups. We are in the 5th week. You will be removed from the meeting for a 3-minute timeout if you keep chatting when told not to or refuse to follow instructions. Daily work word assignment. This will continue throughout online school. I will begin color coordinating the following. Required that day will be in black bold with yellow highlight. Enrichment activities will be extra credit in blue bold. And required but not due that day will be in red bold with yellow highlight. And things that are just for fun will be in green bold. Participation. I know it's easy to sit back online and just observe. We need you to participate. Your input is essential for us. And you have input. Trust yourself and don't be embarrassed. I want you to keep your camera on unless told otherwise, so we make connection. Sometimes I turn my camera off so you pay attention to students presenting. So yeah, sometimes I do turn my camera off, but it's for that reason. So far this year, we are entering week number 5. It's time to follow all guidelines. 90% of our time together online has been fabulous. Thank you very much. If and when we come back face-to-face teaching, we will continue many of the same practices and techniques of online learning. Here's your link for today's meeting and your daily meme. Think about what this means there. Defy expectations, what you're expected to do. Defy them. Not define them, defy them. Look at this cat in the water. Look at this cat fetching a stick. Very interesting. All right, we're going to go now share the daily work screen. And we're still in Unit 2, Day 20, Monday, September 21st, 2020. My homeroom has art. And again, right here, it shows you the color coding now. I hope that helps you. And it'll be there every day so you can refer back to it. We will be continuing to hear from your fables today. And we're going to hear a story from Ireland called The Man Who Had No Story. It's really a fairy tale about an enchanted little area of the forest. And please share in sentences what you think is the point of the story. We'll talk about it, so it just won't be you hearing it and then trying to figure out. We will talk about that. Don't forget, this is required 15 minutes for fiction, 10 minutes for nonfiction. And we're going to do one of these super duper informational paragraphs today. There's sample 1, preparing for the day at the beach. Sample 2, your clothes closet. And today we're going to do one together called Online School Study Center. What's needed for a quality one. So we'll do that together. But then, going back up here, you'll transfer one of your paragraphs into here of your box of facts paragraphs, which can be one of the ones we did together or one of the ones that you do on your own. Spelling and vocabulary, well, you're going to take and test, the vocabulary test from the module and then submit it. It's vocabulary only. We'll do the spelling online. We're going to go through these commas, the comma rules and guidelines. You got your editing topic today. This is the last one for teeth, healthy teeth and what teeth are. Tooths do an important job in our bodies that help us break our food down into smaller pieces. This makes it easier for the digestive system to do its job. It's important to take care of our teeth by brushing and flossing after meals. If we don't brush, food and germs left on our teeth can begin to cause decay, not delay. Decay can weaken and destroy strong, healthy teeth, so be sure to brush and floss every day. Lots of mistakes in there. We will be starting our new small groups meetings today, and you will have the file that you will be doing today in your separate team's room. You'll notice that this is blue, enrichment, world geography games, and this is required, but it's not due yet. We will have a test where you have to identify all 7 continents and all 5 oceans and where they are on the map. Enrichment is here. Balance. How do you balance your life? Schoolwork, playtime, chores, computer and screen time, clubs, everything that you do in your life. And what does it mean to be out of balance? This is for fun, the fun fact of the day. And try these online puzzles and your family fun. What's your least favorite type of chocolate? And there's a cacao nut full of the seeds that are used to make chocolate. Alrighty, we'll stop there. And now we're going to jump into our story. The Man Who Had No Story. Again, this was transcribed or retold by Jane Yolen. The Man Who Had No Story, an Irish folktale or fairy tale. Well, there was a man down here in Bar on Gowth a long time ago, and his name was Brian O'Branichain. The trade that he had was cutting rods, which were used to make baskets, and selling them in the Glenties and in Denlow and in Fintown and everywhere he could get them sold. But one year he was down here, and there wasn't a single rod, which is like a branch, in the whole of Bar on Gowth that he hadn't cut, made baskets of, sold, and then spent the money. Those were bad times. The English were in power, and they wouldn't let the Irish earn a single penny in any way. And Brian didn't know what to do. But in those days, there was a little glen outside of Bar on Gowth that they called Alt and Tor, and there were remarkably fine rods growing there. But nobody dare cut any rods there, for everyone made out that it was a fairy glen. Now again, these rods were like, picture bamboo rods, and then you take them and you can weave them into all kinds of things that people needed and used. But one morning, Brian said to his wife that as she made him up a little lunch, he would go out and get the makings of a couple of baskets, and perhaps no harm would come to him. The wife got up and made up a lunch for him. He put it in his pocket, and he took a hook and a rope under his arm. He went out to the glen, and he wasn't long in the glen until he had cut 2 fine bundles of rods. When he was tying them together so that he could carry them with the rope on his back, a terrible fog started to gather around him. He decided that he would sit down and eat his lunch, and perhaps the fog would clear. He sat down and he ate the lunch he had with him, and when he had finished eating, it was so dark that he could not see his finger in front of him. He stood up and he got terribly scared. He looked to the east and he looked to the west, and he saw a light. Where there is light, there must be people, he thought, and he headed for the light. He tripped and fell the whole time, but in the end, he came up to the light. There was a big, long house there. The door was open, and there was a fine light coming out of the window and the door. He put in his head in the door, and an old woman was sitting in the corner and an old man on the other side of the fire. Both of them saluted Brian O'Branichain from Bar on Gowth and wished him welcome, and they asked him to come up and sit in at the fire. Brian came up and he sat in at the fire between the pair of them. They talked for a while, but he had not been sitting there long when the old man asked him to tell a fairy tale. "That is something that I never did in all my life," said Brian. "Tell a story of any kind. I can't tell Finian tales or fairy tales of any kind." "Well," said the old woman, said she, "take that bucket and go down to the well below the house and fetch a bucket of water and do something for your keep." "I'll do anything," said Brian, "except tell a story." He took the bucket, went down to the well, and filled it with water from the well. He left it standing on the flagstone beside the well so that the water would run off it before he brought it in. But a big blast of wind came, and he was swept off into the sky. He was blowing east and he was blowing west, and when he fell to the ground, he could see neither the bucket nor the well nor anything at all. He looked around and he saw a light. He made out the place where there was light. There must be people, and he headed for the light. He tripped and fell the whole time. It was so dark. But at last he came to the light. There was a big, long house there, far bigger than the first house, 2 lights in it, and a fine light out of the door. He put his head in the door, and what was it but a wake house? There was a row of men sitting by the back wall of the house, and a row of men sitting in the front wall of the house. And up the fire, there was a girl with curly black hair sitting on a chair. Now, a wake house is where you all gather together when someone has died and you have a wake for them. So it's like a celebration of the life of somebody that had died. She saluted and welcomed Brian O'Branichain from Bar and Gath, and she asked him to come up and sit beside her on the chair. Brian came up and he sat beside her on the chair and was very shy, he was too. But he had not been sitting long when a big man who was in the company stood up. "It is a very lonely wake we are having here tonight. A couple of us must go to get a fiddler so that we can start dancing." "Oh," said the girl with the curly black hair, "you don't need to go for any fiddler tonight," said she. "You have the best fiddler in Ireland among you here tonight," said she. "Brian O'Branichain from Bar and Gaoth." "Oh, that is something I never did in my life," said Brian. "Play a tune on a fiddle? And there is no music or singing or fiddling of any kind in my head." "Oh, don't make me a liar. You are the very man who can fiddle." Before Brian knew, he had the bow and the fiddle in his hand, and he played away, and they danced away, and they all said that they had never heard any fiddler play a tune on a fiddle better than Brian O'Branichain from Bar on Gaoth. The big man who was in the company stood up and said that the dancing must stop now. "A couple of us must go for the priest so that we can say mass," he said. That would be the Catholic version of burying somebody. The priest says a special service so that they could go on. "For this corpse must go out of here before daybreak." "Oh," said the girl with the curly dark hair, "there is no need to go for any priest tonight. The best priest in Ireland is sitting here beside me on the chair, Brian O'Branichain from Bar on Gaoth." "Oh, I have nothing of a priest's power of holiness, and I do not know anything about a priest's work in any way." "Come, come," said she, "you will do that just as well as you did the rest." Before Brian knew, he was standing at the altar with two clerks with the vestments on him, all the priestly garb. He started to say mass, and he gave out the prayers after mass, and the whole congregation that was listening said that they had never heard any priest in Ireland giving out prayers better than Brian O'Branichain. Then the corpse was placed in a coffin outside the door, and four men put the coffin on their shoulders. There were three fairly short men and one big tall man, and the coffin was terribly shaky. "One or two of us," said the big man who was in the company, said he, "must go for a doctor so that we can cut a piece of the legs of the big man to make him level with the other three." "Oh," said the girl with the curly black hair, "you don't need to go for any doctor tonight. The best doctor in Ireland is here among us, Brian O'Branichain from Bar on Gaoth." "Oh, that is something I never did in my life. Doctoring of any sort. I never got any doctor's schooling at all." "You'll do that just as well as you did the rest," said she. The lances were given to Brian. He cut off a piece off the big man's legs under his knees, and he stuck the legs back on, and he made him level with the other three men. Then they put the coffin on their shoulders, and they walked gently and carefully west until they came to the graveyard. There was a big stone wall around the graveyard, 10 feet high or maybe 12, and they had to lift one man up on the wall first, and they were going up one by one and going down into the graveyard on the other side. And the last man on top of the wall, ready to go down into the graveyard, was Brian O'Branichain. But a big blast of wind came, and he was swept up off to the sky. He was blown to the east, and he was blown to the west. When he fell down to the ground, he could see neither the graveyard, nor the coffin, nor the funeral. But where did he fall? He fell down on the flagstone beside the well where he had been at the beginning of the night. He looked at the bucket, and the water was hardly dry on the outside of it. He took the bucket up, and he went into the house. And the old man and the old woman were sitting where he had left them at nightfall. He left the bucket by the dresser, and he came and sat in between the pair of them. "Now, Brian," said the old man, "can you tell a fairy tale?" "I can," said he. "I am the man who has got a story to tell." He began to tell the old woman and the old man what he had gone through since nightfall. "Well, Brian," said the old man, "wherever you are from now on, and whenever anybody asks you to tell a story, tell them that story, and you are the man who will have a story to tell." The old woman got up and made Brian a good supper, and when he had had his supper, she made him a feather bed for him, and he went to bed. And he wasn't in bed long before he fell asleep, for he was tired after all he had gone through since nightfall. But when he woke in the morning, where was he? He was lying on Tor outside Bar in Gaoth with his head on the two bundles of rods. He got up and went home, and he never cut a rod from that day to this. The end. All right. Did you see that? Okay. All right, folks, we'll see you soon.